and another effective one. Matthew breaks a tackle, breaks another, gets a block. There are no flags and the race is on. And Matthew goes 90.
Burrow with the snap. Here comes the blitz. Burrow steps away from it, throws, catch made! Justin Jefferson has it at the 38, racing down the far line, sideline, 10-5, touchdown, Tigers!
Another play fake by Burrow, and a deep strike, and an open receiver, Jamar Chase, another touchdown!
Daniels pulls it, takes it himself, he's got the sideline! Jaden Daniels off to the races, and a bang back inside, he takes it to the house, 85 yards for Daniel.
Go ahead and say it, Ed.
Go Tigers!
Welcome into another episode of the Geauxld Standard Podcast. I'm your host, Joe. Hope you had a fantastic week so far. I hope everything's going all right. Make sure you like, share, subscribe to the podcast where we're going to be your best source for your LSU news. Look, this week has not been a busy week per se because we're comparing to the last month and a half of LSU football and LSU news that has been just nonstop. So we've hit sort of a quiet point after signing day. Most of the coaches are in place except for a couple. And we have the transfer portal about to open up in a couple of weeks. So things are about to get crazy. Things are about to get a little mad. So we're going to be your number one place to check in for LSU news, to check in and drop in and see how things are going, get some comments from you guys, and just drop on you what I think about the situations. All right, so let's get it. Hey, yo, let's get it. Well, we love purple. But it's all gold here at the Geauxld Standard Podcast. Again, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. And turn on those notifications so you don't miss any episodes. All right, so first up, let's talk about the coaches first, okay? So we know a lot of Lane's staff came from Ole Miss with him offensively. Nobody from the defensive side has come just yet. So as far as the offensive breakdown, you have obviously Lane Kiffin as your head coach. You have Charlie Weiss Jr. as your OC. You have Dane Stevens, who was with Lane at Ole Miss as a quarterback coach. You have George McDonald, who's the wide receiver and passing game coordinator. You have Jordan Sawyer, I think, who's the inside wide receivers coach. You have Joe Cox, who's going to be your tight end and co-OC. He was also with Lane at Ole Miss. And then you're going to have Eric Walford, who's going to be your offensive line coach, who came over from Kentucky after Mark Stoops was let go there. Just kind of briefly a rundown of all them. Obviously, you know, the Lane train is the offensive brain trust. Charlie Weiss Jr. had agreed to a contract where he was going to get paid $2 million a year. LSU went in and re-upped that to $2.5 every year, and he has what's called a look-in clause on his contract, which means after every season, he and the LSU administration will sit down and ensure that he is the highest paid OC in the SEC. So great news for Charlie there. Great to get him locked in and get his pen to paper because there had been some rumors going back and forth about Ole Miss was keeping him and Ole Miss was expecting him to stay. So very good to go ahead and get that cleared up that Charlie Weiss Jr. will be the offensive coordinator in Baton Rouge next year for Lane Kiffin and the LSU Tigers. Next up, George McDonald, passing game coordinator. Like I said, he was with Lane at Ole Miss. He's another one that's coming over as well. Highly respected as a great technician. I mean, look at Ole Miss's wide receiver room this year. The past few years, I'll give you another example. Trey Harris, who was a great Ole Miss wide receiver, was a quarterback of Malik Neighbors in high school, actually. Was a great receiver over there at Ole Miss under George McDonald. Inside wide receivers coach. Not sure if that just means particularly the slot. I'm assuming so. But you got guys like Winnie Watkins, who was over there in the slot for Ole Miss making plays. So he's coming over with Lane as well. And then Joe Cox, who's well respected. I think in my research, I found out that he was a quarterback in high school in Georgia, well respected and well renowned. Lane trusts him enough to be a co-OC, so he's obviously got some input there with the offense. Another one brought over as well. Big reason we got the tight end commit to flip from Ole Miss as well. I can't recall his name, but I talked about it on a previous pod, so go back and check. And then Eric Walford, who was a coach over at Kentucky. Mark Stoops hired him twice. He also previously worked at Alabama under Nick Saban, so he's well-rounded in the SEC. He's worked in the SEC before, had some respectable units. I listened to somebody today talk about Eric and talk about how the offensive line room and expectations at Kentucky was not a lot based on what they had coming in. They got some guys late, got like one tackle right before the season started. So the fact that they were at least respectable is kind of an indictment, not an indictment, but a way to show how good his coaching acumen is. So that's your offensive staff as of now. The big question is still what's going to happen with Frank Wilson. I answered this on my TikTok. Make sure you guys go follow me on the Geauxld Standard Podcast on TikTok. I answered this on one of my lives. Someone asked me, what do I think happens with Frank Wilson? If you read the tea leaves, this is not any inside information. Again, I'm not I don't have any inside info. I'm not a source guy, anything like that. But just based on the tea leaves here, everyone else on the offensive staff has been announced at this point, except for the running back coach. Frank, when asked about it, said, they've had conversations, but they'll deal with it after the bowl game, where Frank Wilson still intends to be the head coach for the bowl game for the Texas Bowl for the LSU Tigers. And then if you go to Ole Miss, and Pete Golden did I don't know if it was yesterday or today, but I saw him talking about Kevin Smith and kind of said that he's here, he's coaching his butt off and, whatever, but they're going to talk about it after the season. So that lets me know, putting the leaves together, that I think Kevin Smith will be your next running backs coach. What does that mean for Frank Wilson? There were rumors out there that possibly Texas was looking at him, the Longhorns, possibly Ole Miss as well. I did see something today that said Jabbar Jalute, the running back coach from over at Florida, interviewed for the Texas spot as well. So I'm not quite sure what the future holds for Frank Wilson, but I just don't think it's going to be at LSU. And then my thoughts on that. I talked about this before, talked about it during the season, talked about it, as Frank took over for interim. I respect Frank Wilson to the highest degree. He's a legend. He's a godfather in Louisiana recruiting as far as relationships with coaches and players and all that is resolved. And I also talked about it on the Purple Mafia podcast, where I talked about how a lot of what Frank does is keeping the pieces together once they're on campus, and guys are having bad days or guys are thinking about transferring, anything like that. Frank is usually good about keeping everybody together, holding everybody together. But that aside, when it's just business, he asked me to just evaluate him as a running back coach. I would say his performances in the last few years have been subpar. I would ask, where's the development in the running back room? I would say not knowing what guys to put in certain situations, the rotations. There's a lot that goes into coaching, and we don't know what's going on. But again, if you ask me for my opinion, I would say that Frank is not the best running back on the field coach. He's more of a recruiter than a coach. And that's not a knock. Everybody can't be both. Not everybody's Nick Saban to be the greatest recruiter and the greatest coach. But, shout out to Frank for what he's done for the university. Much respect for him. Again, like I say, he's the godfather of LSU and LSU recruiting. But I don't think, if you're asking me, that he's going to be a part of Lane Kiffin's staff next year, at least not on the field as a coach. I do think there's a spot for him in the recruiting department. If he would take it, do I think he'll take it? No. So I say all that to say I don't think Frank Wilson's going to be back as your running back coach. And then on the defensive side, right now, everything is like we ended the season. Blake Baker is your DC and your linebackers coach. Corey Raymond is your DB coach overall in the room. Jake Olsen is your safeties coach. And then Kevin Peoples is still your edge rushers coach. Now, that does leave an open spot for the defensive line. Kyle Williams was currently the LSU defensive tackle coach. And there's a couple of things about that because people are asking, like, did Kyle get fired or Kyle Williams used to be the head coach for Ruston High School, and he kind of stepped away to be closer with his family, spend more time raising his kids and all that kind of jazz. So I think I know he did LSU a solid by stepping in and coaching the defensive tackle room this year. But coaching at this level just wasn't in the cards for him. Like I just told you, he retired from a high school coaching position. College is even more demanding. There's even more taxing things you have to do. So Kyle Williams is all but stepping away as the defensive tackle coach. And where does that leave you? The last time I came on here, I was all up in arms and very excited about the potential of Elijah Robinson joining LSU's coaching staff as a defensive tackle coach. Well-renowned for what he did at Texas A&M. He's known as a good coach and a great recruiter, one of the best in the game at both. So I was excited and joyful, and there were football scoop reports. There were On 3 and 247. Basically, anybody that covered LSU kind of basically put 2 and 2 together or told you outright that Elijah Robinson was looking like he was going to be the new defensive tackles coach. He was on campus. He took a tour. You know, Deuce Gerald's mentioned in his interview that was on 3 that he thought that Elijah was going to be the next coach. So what happened there or what is happening, I don't know. I don't know what the end result is. I would say is leaning more towards Elijah not being the defensive tackle coach as opposed to him being the defensive tackle coach. Things could happen. It could still surprise us, and he still could join the staff. I think it'd be an amazing hire. Where do I think LSU pivots if that doesn't come to fruition? I think they look back at Randall Joyner at Ole Miss. He's a younger defensive line coach who's known as an awesome recruiter as well, and a great on-field coach. LSU actually tried to recruit him before and talk to him about being a defensive line coach, but it didn't. It never aligned where it worked out right. But we have the opportunity now because there's a report out that basically all the coaches on the staff at Ole Miss signed or updated their term sheets that talked about how much they get paid, except for Kevin Smith, the running backs coach who we talked about, Randall Joyner, the defensive line coach who we're talking about now, and I think Joe Judge. I think that. I'm not reporting that, but I think I feel pretty confident that I read that. So, again, I think if you don't get Elijah Robinson, I think Lane Kiffin turns to someone who he's worked with before. And he's worked with Randall Joyner, obviously, at Ole Miss. So where does that lead us now? We're going to talk about the transfer portal. So the transfer portal is obviously going to be huge for the development of this 2026 LSU football team. You're going to need to get a lot of bodies to come in at a lot of critical positions. Obviously, namely, the best one is going to be quarterback. You're going to need multiple quarterbacks out of the portal. Who that is, I don't know. Rumors out there about Trinidad Chandler's trying to get a 6-year. Obviously, if he gets a 6-year, I think he's all but in Baton Rouge, same as the coaching staff that he just coached for. The entire offensive staff pretty much is in Baton Rouge now. So I think he could put 2 and 2 together there. Sam Levitt's name is another one out there transferring from Arizona State. He's apparently got a lot of tools, a lot of measurables, very Jackson Dart-esque. Was kind of the report that I read about him and what his game looks like and what it mirrors. And I watched a little bit of highlights on him. He's very mobile, but the big thing with him is he's got a foot injury, Liz Frank injury, which is bad. I think that's what Derek Stingley had when he was at LSU, and that they can be tricky. It could be 6 months, it could be 8 months, it could be a year, it could be 2 years. So we don't know there. I don't even know if it's official he's in the portal. I think it's expected he goes in the portal, but obviously quarterback is a big position. You're going to need wide receiver play. As of today, I think Aaron Anderson is off to the NFL. Barrion Brown is done. I don't know if Xavier has any more time. Nick Anderson's going to be back. You got a lot of younger guys, but leading up to the transfer portal, you had guys like Kylan Billiard, who was a 2024 recruit. He entered the transfer portal recently, along with Jelani Watkins, who was a speedster, kind of a track dual sport athlete. He was very, very good in track. Also played wide receiver at LSU. The surprise out of the bunch was Ahmad Bro, defensive tackle, who started all of his freshman year and played a ton last year. I don't know if he started from the jump, but he started multiple games last year and played a lot. And he played in rotation as well this year, but I think a lot of it has to do with Kyle Williams, who he played for in high school as well as he went to Ruston. So those are 3 guys in the portal. Who else we got in the portal? We got Juwan Johnson, who's entered the portal. We got Caleb Jackson, who has entered the portal as well as of now. I'm trying to think. Ashton Stamps has entered the portal. And there's one more that has entered the portal as well. The defensive back, Wallace Foster, is the other guy that entered the portal as well. So right now, those 7 guys are in the portal. I don't think any of them are surprises except for Ahmad Bro, because like I said, he had a lot of meaningful playing time this year and started most of last year. But again, I think a lot of that is tied to his position coach, who's Kyle Williams, who he doesn't think is going to be back. So I think he's going to take the opportunity to go to another location. And he still could possibly come back. Just because you get in the portal don't mean you can't come back to the school that you're at. It's unlikely, but there is a possibility he does come back. But as of right now, those are the 7 players, again, that are in the portal. Wallace Foster, a defensive back, hadn't played much since he's been at LSU, more of a nickel guy. Ashton Stamps, who was a 2-year starter for LSU. This year, his 3rd year, he did not play much with DJ Pickett, with Mansour Delane, obviously, and then PJ Woodland. Those the 3 were the 3 bodies in the cornerback room, and Jakeem Jackson played when Mansour Delane was out. And then back on the offensive side, Jelani Watkins, dual sport athlete, Kylan Billiot, who was a late riser in his class, Jawan Johnson. God, I just forgot that quick. Jawan Johnson, Caleb Jackson, and there's another one who I'm forgetting, but I just said his name a minute ago. So again, there will be more additions from LSU to the transfer portal. A lot of it's going to be back of the rotation guys who aren't playing, but a lot of it's going to be guys who, admittedly, this coaching staff may not want back, especially on offense. I don't think you see as much on defense, especially from guys that made impact. I'd be surprised if somebody that played a lot like Ahmad Bro got in on the defense. But on offense, I think you see, I wouldn't be surprised if you got 8 out of 11 starters are new next year or some weird stat like that. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I think they obviously need quarterback. They need bodies on the offensive line. You're going to need playmakers at wide receiver. Bauer Sharp is gone, so you may need a replacement at tight end. And then look at your running back room. Jawan Johnson and Caleb Jackson are gone. If Frank Wilson leaves, what does that mean for Caden Durham? What does that mean for Harlan Berry? You're at least going to need 2 bodies. If those 2 guys come back, you at least need a couple more bodies in the room to be to do what you need. And obviously, if you get someone like Kevin Smith over, the Keywan Lacey rumors are going to start. There's already Winston Watkins rumors about him following Lane Kiffin from Ole Miss. Again, they're waiting on Trinidad Chambliss to see whether or not he's going to get that 6th year. If he gets that 6th year, I expect him to be in Baton Rouge. I just do. And yeah, so that's kind of where we are right now with everything, guys. Not a lot going on right now. You filled every spot on the coaching staff, on-field coaches, except for the running backs coach and the defensive tackle coach. I think we'll get clarity on those 2 soon. You got about 7 players in the transfer portal. No big surprises yet aside from Ahmad Bro. And then it actually opens. The transfer portal opens on the 2nd of January. It's open for 2 weeks, closes on the 16th. So I think you'll see a lot of movement from LSU being aggressive on guys in the portal there, especially on offense. On defense, you got edge rushers that I think they're going to be aggressive on. Maybe a linebacker, defensive tackle, maybe the right corner, and I think maybe a safety as well. So the transfer portal will be very interesting to cover. There'll be a lot of stuff going on in January, but right now we're just kind of waiting till the bowl game ends. I think there'll be clarity right before or right after on Frank Wilson. And then we'll kind of get the 2026 season officially in effect as we end 2025. It was a bit of a up and down year, to say the least, for LSU. My expectations coming in were not 7-5. I think early on, I felt like it was going to be time for them to make a move on Brian Kelly. I did not think that they would because of the buyout, and they did. And here we are for the best with Lane Kiffin and the Lane train and such a bright future in Baton Rouge and just everything looking up. So again, guys, make sure you like, share, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you drop some comments and let me know what you think about all the coaching moves. Let me know what you think about the transfer portal news so far. Who are some targets that you would like to see LSU be aggressive on in the portal? What are some position groups? All that. Who would you like to see Lane field the defensive tackle and running back coach with? Let me know. Let me know in the comments. But if nothing else, thank you guys for tuning in to the podcast today. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Please, please, please. Make sure you like at the least. The algorithm loves that, and it does me good as well. So appreciate all the love and support. Thank you for tuning in to the Geauxld Standard Podcast. Well, we love gold, but it's all purple, baby. Oh, I got you. We love purple, but it's all gold, baby. Y'all have a great evening. Go Tigers and play net.